Good evening and welcome to the January 17th, 2018 Shelbourne Development Review Board meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. As always, we ask people that attend to please use the sign-in sheet right clearly so that our recording secretary can identify you. The first item, as always, is public comment, and this is for items that are not on the agenda for this evening. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring to our attention that is not on the agenda this evening? Not seeing anything, we'll move right to item 3, which is approval of the minutes. Anybody have any comments on the minutes from January 3rd? No? Jeff?
I do not.
Jeff? Ian? Lisa? Okay, so go ahead.
Sorry, not sure I'm doing it at the right time.
Okay.
I have hearing loss, I have hearing aids.
Okay.
But it's hard to hear all of you, so.
All right. Well, we'll talk to the gentleman. He's running the speakers, so we'll do the best we can. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 3rd?
I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 3rd, 2018.
Second? Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we've had a couple requests for continuation. Item 4 on the agenda this evening's Conditional Use Application CU 1415R1 and the Site Plan 0405R1. The Village Wine and Coffee expansion, they've asked for a continuance until 30 days. So we need to continue to a date certain, so would someone like to make a motion to accept their request for continuance until February the 7th? It's moved and seconded. Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we've also had a request to continue item 5, which is application CU 17-15 and SP 1707. An application by Selin and Selin for a conditional use and site plan review on some single-family dwellings at 236 High Acres Farm. Do we have a date for them? 7th as well, so somebody like to make a motion to move that to February 7th as well?
I'll make a motion to move that to February 7th.
Okay, second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Joanna. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that quickly takes us ahead to 725, which is application SUB 13-02R3, which is a continuation of an application by Graham Goldsmith Architects for an amendment to an existing commercial PUD. This is a proposal that includes combining buildings 1, 5, and 6 and allowing for the construction of a 30,000 square foot building and extending cafe operating hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. outward to 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. This is going to require several changes to a written conditions of approval from a previously approval. This property is at 6221 Shelburne Road, is located in Commerce and Industry South in the Stormwater Overlay District, and I believe it's commonly known as the Shelbourne Green PUD. So, as always, for one, do we have any recusals here? I know Mary's recused herself from this one, so she'll be coming later. I would like to, if we could, just swear anybody in at one time who's going to testify in this matter so we can just get that out of the way. So would anybody who plans to testify this evening please stand up and raise your right hand? And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, under the pains and penalties of perjury in the matter under consideration? Thank you very much. So I would also ask you to make sure you please use the microphone and identify yourself. That's not for us, it's for the videotape recording and for our vast viewing audience at home this evening. So, and who's going to be kicking this off for Mr. Goldsmith? Okay, I thought so. So if you would, you can use either of these two microphones and identify yourself and tell us where we are compared to last time around.
Excellent. So I did not have the privilege of attending the last meeting. My name is Yves Bradley. I work with Graham on the project at Shelbourne Green and have been involved with it from the outset when I worked with Mark Snelling to help sell the property. I brought with me Ryan Hawk, who is our sound expert, Norm Stanislas, who is the general contractor for the project, Al Nevins, the architect, and Peter Raymond, one of the attorneys that's part of the project as well. So having not been here last time, I thought what I would do is just bring you up to speed on what we have been doing in between the last meeting and this one. We had what I would consider to be a very good meeting with a group of people from the Gables. Unfortunately, not everyone who was on the board was able to attend, but I felt that, and I'm sure they will relay to you their own impressions, but that we came away from the meeting with a far greater understanding on both sides as to what was actually being proposed on our side, and hopefully what we were looking to do to help assuage any issues that they may have now or in the future concerning the project and the proposed expansion, as well as changes that we're requesting of you. I think, to paraphrase where we are with them, what we tried to really stress was the fact that we consider ourselves a neighbor of the Gables. We understand and want to know all of their concerns. We heard their concerns. There were concerns, at least initially, around line of sight of the buildings. Just to fill you in, we came back with a revised color scheme for the buildings, which we can show you, which will allow them to blend in quite a bit better. We did provide some clarification as to the plantings that have been done for screening, which are actually all up to date. What I can tell you, though, is when we did go back through to look at the plantings that have been done, we felt that the pines that we initially specified as screening for the project were not sufficient. And so we are proposing that we add another 27 trees to what we've already discussed, which we can show you, and these would be white spruces that would start at about 7 feet tall. The reason we chose these is because they're very full. They grow about 2 feet a year. And so within about 2 years, the eave line is about 11 feet. So they would completely screen the buildings in terms of the height of the trees that are coming up. With noise, we did commission a sound study, which I believe was shared with you in your packet. Hopefully you'll find that the results are acceptable as being well below what Shelburne considers acceptable or not. We oriented the building and sort of redesigned the building such that the cafe is oriented in a way to absorb as much noise as possible and to project noise completely away from both the Gables as well as the residential area to the north of the project. And really had, I thought, a good dialogue, particularly with Matt Cohen, who unfortunately can't be here with us tonight, as to what it really means that he's asking for. And you know that we're not proposing a loud speakeasy. We're proposing something that's part of his experience with Fiddlehead. As he told you the last time that he was here, he has definite plans for capping production and only being so large. So we feel that this is kind of it in terms of his expansion, which we support. And our hope is to continue the dialogue tonight to impress on you that we are really eager to do whatever we need to do to satisfy you that these changes are worth making, and that we will do anything you require in terms of process. Obviously, we'd like to do this sooner rather than later, but whatever the process is, we're fully willing to engage in it, to hear criticism and comments, and do whatever we can to mitigate those and make you feel good about the changes we've requested. Our thought is that sometimes, I've been on the Burlington Planning Commission for about 5 years. It certainly doesn't make me an expert, but one thing I have learned from planning is that planning evolves. When we initially came to the town of Shelburne with the vision for Shelbourne Green, we had a vision in mind. That vision has largely realized itself and seems to continue to realize itself, but it has evolved. We could have never known that we would have a tenant like Matt Cohen and Fiddlehead when we first began this. His expansion has been nothing short of fantastic, and his growth. And what we're trying to do is sort of respond to what the tenants as well as the park itself seems to be moving towards, and asking you to support that or put us in a direction where we can go that will essentially support what we're trying to do. So there you have it.
Any questions of Mr. Bradley from board members?
Do you have a copy of the existing site plan or the current site plan?
In existing conditioning?
Yeah,
No, not.
but that's in our packet, right? The first. Okay. All right. And so Fiddlehead's currently in building 1 and 5 on the.
Currently in building 1
Okay.
and building, I can't really see those.
Yeah, the 5 is the one right next.
5 is not yet.
Oh,
exist.
okay.
That's it.
Oh, building 1. Okay.
That's it.
Got it.
And right now, though, this building has been constructed.
Okay.
And this one, which is building 4,
Right.
is under construction.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Can you show us where you're putting the white or the spruce, the new trees?
Yes, so the spruces are planned, this is a very naked area, and they're planned to be planted right here. What we would do is an offset planting, so it would be tree, and then a tree behind each one of those to sort of completely fill in the space.
Okay,
So it's going to be all along.
there they are. Okay, great. At last meeting, there was discussion on moving a pile of dirt. Is that off the table?
So the thought there was to create a berm.
Right.
And we learned some rather interesting things about what the state allows you to do and doesn't allow you to do with the berm, and I can let either Al or Norm fill you in. But essentially to get, I think it was 4 feet or 3 feet, we had to build a 150-foot wide berm, which seemed a little nonsensical, and that's why we were
Width?
the trees.
You mean the,
In width. 115 feet width to get 4 feet of height.
really?
Yeah.
Our state did that?
In order to comply with the slope requirements.
Is that from,
That's from our.
where in the state from?
Well, the information came from our engineer, David Marshall.
Yeah.
And he sent us a letter to that effect. And Al, do you by chance have a copy of that? Is that due to proximity to wetland or what?
There's a certain.
Yeah, it seems excessive.
Yeah, it does. That's what we thought.
You want to speak on that?
So basically what had happened is after the previous meeting, we immediately went to our site engineer, David Marshall, and we said, listen, we've talked to the neighbors and we're thinking a berm may be a good way to mitigate the issues. And, of course, at that point, we're thinking something maybe 24 feet wide by 10 feet high, and then plantings on top of them. So unfortunately, David came back and said that I believe the slope requirement, was it 7%, Al? The slope requirement could not exceed 7%. So over 115 feet width, that would only give us 4 feet of height. And so clearly, in order for us to, what that would do is that would unfortunately destroy all the existing vegetation that's been in there for a number of years. So we felt, and then the other issue obviously is the setback from the wetland buffer, which is 50 feet. So that was another criteria that we wouldn't be able to meet. And then obviously the permitting and the Primag soil mitigation. And so there was a number of things that came into play that we just felt that at that point it was not appropriate to pursue the Burm idea. And that's why we proposed the white spruce idea with the very thickly filled white spruce that grow at a rate of approximately 2 feet per year.
Do me a favor and just identify yourself for the record.
My name is Norman Stanislaus, and I'm
Okay.
the site contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the white spruce are only going to be on the open area of that picture. How does that address the fact that you said that the pines are not providing the buffer? So then, is there still going to be half of the space that is not going to have adequate buffer?
No, I mean, the buffer is filled in the way that we were asked to fill it in.
Okay.
So it's all there, but what's the trees that were specified, if you go and look, they're fine, but they don't mature quickly.
Okay.
And so they eventually will mature, but they're not doing the job that they should. And so that's what the Burm, I think, came out of those being insufficient. And that's why we felt that these, moving forward, these would definitely be what we use, simply because the coverage is so much better. And they really do absorb a lot more.
Okay.
I mean, you may not be able to answer this, but looking at the east and north side of the proposed building, what kind of openings are planned to the building envelope on those two sides? I mean, the sides that kind of face, kind of Sinus Shore and...
Yeah. I'm going to let either Norm or Al speak to that one.
Just a couple of windows, really,
Okay.
on that side. Yep.
And the plan also is, originally the building was going to be, it was going to be a red building, so it would start out like a barn, and we decided that this would be far more appropriate. A green building, which would then blend in with the green shrubbery, and more of a gray roofing material, which would then sort of look like the sky.
Yeah.
And that view is
So
looking,
that view is,
The south elevation.
yeah, you are looking this way.
Oh, okay. It's the west.
So you're kind of looking back towards the Gables.
Okay.
Yeah, the Gables would be on here. So that, if I'm not mistaken, that's this building, and then this is that end.
okay. Are you guys going to get into a discussion on noise?
You mean in terms of the noise study,
Yeah.
if you'd like?
If you
Well-
can back up 1 second, you said that you rearranged some of the features of the building to try to focus the activity away from the neighboring. Could you explain? Maybe Alan would want to do that, or so, whatever, it's up to you.
Just the positioning of the cafe, Al, to sort of put it in the corner so that it would grab as much sort of sound abatement as possible. So originally, I'm sorry, I wish I had a point. The cafe was going to be more toward the end of the new building coming this way. And
Okay.
now the decision's been made to put it right in that corner so that it's essentially buffered on two sides.
Can you
The
specifically
northeast
show us?
the
We need a
northeast
pointer.
corner?
We need a pointer.
Can you lower the map so we can read?
Yeah, right.
I'll be my own pointer.
Somebody
Watch
left
this. Here comes.
Somebody left one.
This is going to be
here
high
once.
tech.
There we go.
Oh.
Thank you.
Dean, always with the answers.
Whoa.
Yeah, somebody left one here once.
Okay, so kind of exactly where's the cafe going?
Yellow button?
Yellow, all right.
Okay, so the northwest corner.
Correct.
So what will be in the southern portion of that building?
So southern portion
Where the
Right there, yeah.
Processing products and packaging.
processing and packaging.
Okay. Will there be?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. As I recall, there were going to be no little, if any, windows or anything or doors on that side of the building? On the east side?
Port side, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Or not, excuse me, the Gables side.
Yep.
Will there be accommodations for outdoor seating?
Yes. There'll be a small patio there.
Okay.
So that's a pretty significant change from the last presentation.
So of course everyone's going to wonder, where does the band set up?
So the building elevation that you held up, it looks like that building sits up quite a bit above the parking lot. Is that the finished floor elevation? Looks like there's a big flight of stairs.
Oh, no, I don't believe so.
Oh, the driveway, the whole driveway slopes up, so what's that representing is basically the top of the driveway. The building 5 would be at that top of that sloping driveway. The land does slope quite a bit from when you enter Sage Court to by the time you get up to building 6. So that's,
Oh, I see.
yeah.
Okay, so that, I see.
Yeah, I don't think that's a big stairwell. I think it's meant to be a walkway, but it just
Okay.
doesn't really look like one.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to hear a little bit about the noise study. If you could walk us through some of that and kind of.
Would you like me to come up and maybe just give a summary of what we did and then
that
have
would
you
be
guys
great.
ask some questions? I'd be happy to.
That'd be great.
Would you like the pointer? Yellow button.
Yeah, it's better than a pen, huh? Okay. That's the microphone. Sorry, Radio Land.
You're good.
Hi, my name is Ryan Hawk. I work for RSG in White River Junction, Vermont. We're in Vermont. So we did a study for the architects here about noise generated by guests and music inside of the structure. So what we basically did was, based on the construction materials that have been specified, we calculated sound transmission coefficients and data for the walls to understand how much sound the structure itself will allow through. And so also, in doing that, as you can imagine, the weakest link would be any flanking paths, or what I would call a flanking path, but what you may think of as an open orifice or a window or a door. And so what we did in the study is we looked at 3 specific scenarios which kind of represented the broadest range of operations, let's say, of the windows and the doors. One thing I will say that is different in our study from, I think maybe something's changed in the design, but we did model windows and doors that could open on the east side of the structure, based on a plan, which if you have the report, the plan that I went off of is in that report. I'm not sure what you've been provided. It looks, I think I see the report there. We also produced a 1-page summary. Yep, that's the one. That kind of doesn't go into all the detail, but rather just says what we did, and here's the results of this study. That's kind of the basics of it. I feel like rather than me ramble on, it'd be better for me to take specific questions from the board.
And the studies indicate what? Can you summarize?
Sure. Basically, as you might imagine, as you open windows and doors, more noise is able to exit the structure. And, you know, in this case, what we're most concerned about is noise going to the east and to the north. The study did show that from these interior sources, the sound levels were significantly lower than any town of Shelburne, than the town of Shelburne standard, which is basically a 60 dBA LEQ 1 hour standard.
So how does it compare to a truck going down Route 7?
Well, that's interesting you say that.
I didn't bring my glasses.
So let's see. I could answer that in a couple ways. Based on a visit to the site today, where I stood and listened and looked at my sound level meter. You know, the loudest sounds that we are projecting at property lines were approximately background sound levels, or on the higher range of background sound levels that I was measuring, which were coming from trucks on the road, for instance. So, you know, I kind of almost don't like answering the question because it's a very different sound, right? A truck coming down the road, the spectral content is different. It's clear compared to, you know, what we're looking at, which is voices and a low level background music. So, I mean, there's numbers in the report, but the highest sound level that we predicted at the property line was 52 dBA, and that's with everything open, everything blasting. I'd like to caveat all of that with that I do believe that we made a lot of conservative assumptions in the model by not including any forest. We did not include any attenuation, which would add anywhere between 1 and 2 dB of attenuation potentially. That is not included. We also distributed this relatively loud sound level of 80 dBA, which kind of represents a really loud bar. Maybe not a New York City bar, but you know, where you're having trouble conversing with the person next to you. That sound level was distributed throughout the building and throughout the patio. I think it's rather unlikely that that's actually the case, but that was how we did the study.
Has there been any consideration taken for, you know, I mean, that's looking at, you know, this one project and the acoustic effect or the auditory effect it has on, you know, the surrounding area, but looking at, you know, say 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years down the road when this project is, if and when this project is fully developed, I mean, what might that look like if you're looking at kind of the aggregate sound of, you know, say, you know, all the tenants in, you know, those buildings combined with this?
That's right. We did not look at any other noise sources besides.
I mean, there are a lot of hypotheticals there, but...
I mean, it comes down to what, yeah, I mean, a car driving in there makes noise, but is that something that is of concern in a parking lot? Maybe. I will say that we modeled the fully constructed development with all the buildings rather than, you know, as it would just be added on to.
Okay. Okay.
Emanating from other
That's
other
right.
portions.
That's right.
Okay.
Pretty hard to forecast.
Yeah.
Right.
Uses,
Yeah.
timing, it's pretty tough to say.
So am I reading your graph correctly that 52 dBi would be equivalent to a field with insects?
Yeah, and so that's the funny thing about sound here is because we're talking about it in an A-weighted scale, which is weighted to how we perceive it. And so in a field with insects, for instance, there's higher frequency, 1, 2 to 8 kilohertz, which in the lower portion of the range that I just described, you know, that's the sound levels that we hear the best.
Okay.
Compared to, you know, a truck is actually producing a great deal of sound energy, but we're really only perceiving, you know, a certain portion of it.
Okay.
I'm still struggling on how the sound will be perceived by the neighbors versus what already comes from Route 7. Can you help? Fashion?
So I really can't answer that question without knowing what the current sound level is there and what the character of the area is, what the existing sources are. You know, from standing on the site for 5 minutes today or 25 minutes, you know, the airport, the road, you know, there's existing sources there.
Sure. It's kind of like, what's the background noise?
Exactly. And
Right.
so I can't definitively answer that question without, you know, knowing what are the existing conditions over, you know, several days, several meteorological conditions.
Just, Mr. Bradley, use the microphone, please. I know it's pain, but I want to get you on record.
So just as a layman, I would think, and this question maybe for you, Rod, I would think that if the concern is a noise that's traveling from Route 7, I think that having a buffer of buildings would actually reduce that sound level
Yeah.
because they would not only deflect it, but they'd also absorb it. So theoretically, at least, and again,
Route 7's a line source, though, so you'll have it coming before and after.
right.
I'm just trying to look out for
Sure.
the general public
No,
to understand
yeah.
it. I mean, if your study shows that, oh, it's lost in the background, that's okay, that's one thing. But if it says, oh, yeah, you're going to be projecting above the background, that's another.
I mean, to me, 3 buildings, separate buildings with openings between them versus one continuous building would be less noisy, you know, because you have fewer openings for it to travel between.
Yeah.
The point of the traffic noise, I'll just speak to that for a moment. One thing I noticed on the site was that to the south here, the road kind of climbs up. And so there is this opportunity for, I suspect, not having visited the Gables site specifically, but I suspect that there is a line of sight for a great deal of distance because of that slope. You're able to look up the hill and watch a truck come down the road. But what is happening with these buildings is that they are, I believe, going to create a barrier at the point where the trucks or the traffic on Route 7, where they would be the loudest, where they're the closest to the residences, that is being blocked now by this barrier that is several buildings and frankly partially exists because of the buildings that already exist, I guess.
All right. So this probably isn't a question for you. So what does the town have in play? And it goes down to a band that's there on a Saturday night. You know, does the town ordinances say that the band has to stop at 10 o'clock? All right. And
I think the first thing to hit on is that bands aren't allowed as part of their approval.
well, that's what I was wondering. Okay.
And the second part, I wouldn't want to quote without having the bylaws right in front of me on that. But there's between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. there's a certain decibel level. Yeah.
That's right.
And then between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. it can be 50 or 60, and it lowers for music down to by 5 decibels to 55. So
And that's measured at the property line.
Correct.
And the residences are additional.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think the first point of that is more important than
Yeah.
no bands.
Yeah, I will say that we did not model a full rock band, let's say. To give you an example, you know, we modeled an 80 dBA source inside that building distributed. A rock band would be somewhere more like 95, just to give you a data point on that.
What impact does atmosphere have on the sound in a situation
Sure.
like
So,
this? And what did you use for? What's the model used for inputs?
So the model is calculated under conditions that are good for sound to propagate, that allow sound to propagate well. And what that is a calm atmosphere where there's an inversion condition, which basically means that the ground is now warmer than the air. And so sound can bend down as opposed to bend up into the atmosphere. And so with that, what you get is sound that kind of cascades, let's say, along the ground, as opposed to sound in a typical atmosphere without an inversion would just kind of go up. So an inversion condition typically occurs at night or in a calm.
And that's
or
what
in
the
the morning.
model uses for input?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And are you saying that sound travels further when it goes up or travels further?
If it travels for, I don't know if that's the right question necessarily. It's more that it would be that by traveling up into the atmosphere, it's kind of attenuate, and people aren't going to hear it. Compared to if it stays along the ground, you're more able to hear it, because you're not losing as much sound to the atmosphere.
That's worst case.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? Questions?
I would just like to add that that the sound study is used for several agencies within the state of Vermont, so it is believed to be deemed accurate. One of them is Act 250 and also the Environmental Court, and I believe that information is part of your study that's in front of you this evening.
Saw that. Yep, thank you. All right, do you have anybody else that you'd like to have present this evening? Thank you very much. I see we've got a letter from your attorney. Is there anybody else that wants to speak to this before I have Mr. Pierce talk? I take it you're here to testify, Dean? No. Okay. You're here to ask questions. Of us or of the applicants? Okay. Well. At this point, no. If you'd like to go ahead, we'll take public comment now. If you'd like, sir. Yes. As you wish, sir.
Just a few things. My name is, if I'm too loud, let me know. My name is David Stewart. I'm with the Gables. We have another member of our board of directors here, Ann. We met with Stan, Matt, Yves, Monday a week ago. Am I clear? You to discuss this situation, and it was a very good meeting. And they were very accommodative and answered questions very forthrightly. And out of that meeting came the fact that they were going to change the color of the buildings and that they were going to plant a tree line, which was going to be fast-growing trees that would absorb sound. They presented to us the noise study, which I think was very nice of them to go to that extent to show their goodwill. I've read through it a little bit. It's Greek to me, pretty much. So Matt also mentioned to us at that meeting, Matt is the owner of Fiddlehead. Yes, he's the owner of Fiddlehead. And that he's asking for a variance to be open till 10 p.m. when in fact he believes the place will be empty at 9 o'clock because it's going to be like Felino's. People will come early and leave early and not be a bar per se. But he needs the 10 o'clock just in case people stay beyond 9 o'clock. He cited as an example of this Felino's. Most of you are probably familiar with Felino's. It's pretty empty at 9 o'clock if you've ever gone there. He also said that on that patio that they want to have, there would be, you could not buy a growler. You all know what a growler is? It's one of those biggies. And you couldn't sit out there and drink your growler. That he wouldn't have a license for that, so you couldn't just sit out there and chat and have a few beers and do that. Yeah, you had to, if you bought a growler, you had to leave. You bought it and went. Yeah. You could sit out there. Okay.
He has what's called a tasting license.
Okay. I'm not sure what the differentiation is.
You can only serve so much at one time.
Okay.
For consumption. Yep. Yes, you could.
He definitely mentioned pints as well as the, a flight for a tasting.
Right. Okay.
The other thing he did mention, from my understanding, is that this was going to be a restaurant. I don't know if that's accurate right here, that he would serve food in that restaurant. That's not accurate.
No, you're correct. He has to serve food, which I believe.
Right.
Thank you, Mary.
Yes, according to the state, for the use that's described, he has to serve a certain amount of food by requirement.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not meant to be a restaurant. And I hope he conveyed to you that his desire is certainly not to be in the restaurant business whatsoever. It's to do whatever the minimum is that the state requires to allow him to pursue what he wants to do.
Yeah, he was vague on that, as you recall. Wasn't going to be fillets and New York strips, but it was going to be something. So, but that's a closed situation. We're less concerned with that because it's contained and closed, but I just wanted to make that point. So the issue for us has always been the noise issue. And it's because we're concerned about what level that noise will be. In particular, for those of you who don't know, the Gables is right here. You can't see it, it's not quite on there. But on a summer evening, we have all our owners on that side have a deck which faces west, okay? And on a summer evening, it's often customary for our owners to sit out on their deck and enjoy a western sunset. The west is over here. And our concern is that the ambience of that will be disrupted to some extent by the noise coming from this. We don't know. It might be nothing, but we are sensitive to that. We are also sensitive to the fact that, as Yves mentioned, planning evolves. Matt is the owner of a very successful business with a great brand name. He's worked hard to create that. And it's very likely that he's going to be successful in this new development that he's constructed. He may be back in 3 years asking for more than you grant in terms of allowing the customary rock band or louder music, as you say, or later hours. The board is charged with changing what is an existing plan which called for a 6 a.m. to a 6 p.m. Food service issue to a 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's a significant difference in our view. It changes the texture and context of this development significantly. We're also sensitive to the fact that we do not want to be perceived as being anti-business or anti-success. So we find ourselves in a difficult predicament a little bit. I think Matt's built a great business. He has a great brand and a great beer. And we don't want to seem to be negative, but we are sensitive to what could evolve from this. In closing, I'd just probably like to say, to add to some of your comments about truck noise at night. In the winter, the noise coming from there probably is a non-issue. All of us have closed doors. Nobody's sitting out on their deck. And in the summer, I am actually not on this side of the development. My unit is quite a ways from here, so I'm likely to be least impacted or much less so impacted. But even when my window is open at night in the summer, I can hear trucks coming down Route 7. I can hear if they put their engine brakes on. It just travels across that field and comes in my window. I can't do anything about that. It does exist. And so I guess that's about all I had to say, unless, Ann, you want to add a few comments?
I'll add a couple of comments. I'm Ann Powell. I'm also on the board. Maureen is also on the board. And we have a couple of other non-board people there today, too. A couple of things we talked about. The hours, as Dave said, that's a big one for us. And I know Matt several times said everybody will be out by 9 o'clock. But if it's open until 10, I'm not sure they will all be gone by 9 o'clock. And you're sitting there having your nice beer or whatever, and whatever's being served, bags of potato chips or whatever it has to be. And now it's 9:30. You don't want to be hustled out. And Matt doesn't want to have it work out that way. So if they're allowed to be open till 10, open to customers until 10. I'm guessing some customers will stay there till 10. When you talk about Foligno's is pizza. It's not beer. And I don't think the Fiddlehead that's down by Foligno's is open that late either. So it's not an absolutely equal comparison in my eyes, in my suspicions. We talked briefly, they did have a concert apparently at opening day, I believe it was, right? Opening day concert? Yeah. And we asked, are there going to be more concerts? And we didn't, as I remember, get a definite no. It was sort of, well, we'll see. And that would be, again, another step beyond what is supposed to be happening at Shelbourne Green in light commercial and so on. And one question for you folks is, I'm not sure from the many pieces I've looked at, the connector between buildings 5 and 6, is that completely closed in, or at least on the east side? Do you know, Norm?
I can testify to that. Currently,
Use the mic, please, Norm.
Perfectly fine.
And maybe you could come up and use the mic in front, please.
so currently the plan that has been submitted to the board and that we had requested a permit on the easterly side at the connector, currently there are 2 windows and an egress door, okay, on the easterly side. Obviously, right, the 2 windows located here and the 1 door for egress. Now, whether or not that door can be eliminated, obviously, is a matter of access. And can we satisfy the powers that be, the fire marshal, so on and so forth, that we can eliminate that door and relocate another exit?
But the connector is indoor space.
The connector, that is correct, yes.
Okay, I think that's my questions at this point. Did you have any more, Dave?
Just so everybody's familiar with the spaces here, the westernmost point of the Gables units across that little wetland area from the back of the building is about 200 to 300 feet. It's not a very long space. We're not a half a mile away.
Scaled it with the scale, it's about 500.
Is it 500? Okay.
Because I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So, my name is Ladal Thibodeau. I live at the Gables. And convenient enough, I'm right over here. So, right now I can see light coming from here. Now, I don't know about you, but if you have a porch, just imagine, it's winter, but you're not going to be sitting on your deck. But in the summer, you're going to sit there like the gentleman over there just said. And what I'm going to hear is not just the traffic going down, but I'm going to hear maybe, if it's a successful business, on any given night, maybe 150 cars. Just imagine in your backyard, 150 cars going in and out, lights bouncing off, some music over here. Now they say 10 o'clock. I'm going to be out here. I'm going to be listening, not intently, but I'm going to be listening. No longer am I going to hear the birds. I'm going to hear cars, tooting, people talking, whatever. I just want you to think about that as you're sitting on your back porch. You could be thinking of me over here. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you can clarify. There's no bands allowed outside, right?
No bands allowed.
Period. So there won't be music.
No bands.
I'm talking 10 o'clock at night. It's a whole different story. People talking, cars.
No, but you mentioned music.
Music. Maybe not music.
Okay.
But I don't know about you, but voices travel.
Yep.
Now, right now, excuse me, I'm still Lavelle Thibodeau talking.
Oh, Mike.
Use the mic.
Yeah. Right now, you don't have 150 cars there. You don't have maybe, let's say there are 2 people come for those in those cars. Now, if he's got a successful business, which I hope he does, that's 300 people.
How long have you lived there, Mr. Thibodeau?
14 months.
So just to be clear,
But I did live in Shelburne for 21 years on Stokes, near the school.
I just want to make a clarification. The development's been approved already.
Yeah, I know
So
that.
they're asking, rather than 3 different buildings, to have one continuous building, which we're assuming will help sound transmission.
Yes, the 6 o'clock thing sounds great to me. You know, for me, it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
The development has been approved. That's correct. With 6 a.m. to 6
Yeah.
p.m.
No, I'm
This
just
is a
pointing,
big
making
difference.
clear that we're not ruling on whether the development can happen.
No, no.
Okay.
It's the 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah. And the connecting
time
of the
frame.
buildings. Yeah.
I also went there walking my walkabout last week, and the trees that they're talking about are really short. Now, unless they grow pretty darn quick, 2 feet a year in accelerated progress.
I don't think the trees they're speaking about have been planted yet, sir.
But the trees that they're talking about that are just supposedly there now, if you take a peek, they're pretty small.
I did take a look at them, yes.
And are they small?
Relative term, yeah, I guess. All right. Anybody else from the Gables or the public that has anything they'd like to say? Mr. Stanislaus.
Just a couple things that I'd like to clarify on. Number one was the hours of operation with the previous meeting with Matt saying that, you know, the intent would be to be closed at 9 and to be out of there by 10. I mean, I think that unfortunately Matt cannot be here this evening, but I think that if we were to get this successfully approved and the board were to say, for instance, last call will be at 9 p.m., building empty by 9:30, I think that would be more than acceptable as far as Matt is concerned. The other thing is going to the bands and so on and so forth. Our understanding is that it would necessitate a need for an events permit from the town and the state if he was to do a special event like he did prior to when he first originally opened.
Not from planning and zoning. We don't do event permits. Events, it was a one-time event, and zoning is such that even if you issue an NOV that day, you have 7 days to correct, and if it's a one-day event, it's corrected by the time. Okay. So if there's going to be continuing events, it would have to be part of the approval for the PUD.
Right.
And I think based on the conversation with Matt, I do not think that Matt would have an issue with that if he had to comply with a certain request for an event permit from the town. The other thing is just going back to the trees, the existing trees that were the cedar trees that are currently located back here, there's no question, them are double rowed, they're staggered, they are not growing at a rapid rate. However, the white pine trees that are located in this area, I can tell you at this point that several of them white pines have already reached a height of approximately 18 feet from the date they were installed. So that's significant. So clearly between the white pines and their growth pattern and the white spruces installed over a very short period of time, that would clearly close in that buffer very, very well. That's pretty much all that I have to say. I clearly, we understand the Gables concerns. We're trying to address them, but also the section that we are developing in is also the commerce and industry section. And this development started back in 1966. The Gables originally came in and built their project in 1988. So at that point in time, the Gables, when they presented their project, they were clear and aware of what existed at the property line as far as the difference in zoning, so on and so forth. Once again, we're trying to do everything we can to help them with their concerns, to mitigate the issue so that they feel that we're moving forward in a manner that would satisfy everybody.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Powell.
Going back to the hours again. Okay, closing time's 9:30. People don't always leave immediately. So there may be people lingering in the parking lot beyond 10, who knows how long, and nobody's going to be up there shushing them, most likely. So it's a real concern. I asked Matt about 8 o'clock, but he feels they'll all be gone by 9, and we are not so sure of that at all. We really appreciate the fact that we can talk together, the fact that they have listened to us about the plantings, about the colors of the buildings. But one of the big stickers is those hours and the kind of business that will be in that building.
Yep, got that message. Mr. Bradley, did you want to add something? Use the mic, please. Back and forth we go.
The only thing that I wanted to point out that may have been brought up also is that in terms of development, I believe we're taking away 2 buildings as part of this that were part of the original site plan. And I don't know if it's possible to pull that up. I do have a copy here.
There it is. We've got it.
Got it.
Yeah. These 2 are going to be taken away, so they will no longer be built.
Clear. All right. So, any further questions from board members at this time? Mr. Pierce, did you have anything you wanted to, questions you wanted to ask, or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Dean Pierce, Director of Planning, here representing the Administrative Officer, Joe Colangelo, who has filed a entry of appearance in this matter. I came with a list of questions. We're hoping the applicant can supply answers to the questions and do so on the record.
Okay, these questions, this is the first time they're hearing these questions? Have they been submitted to the applicant prior?
No, these are questions I'm bringing to the board. And if the board's pleasure is that they be submitted in writing and that the applicant respond in writing,
well, let's see what you got.
Yeah. The questions are related to the cafe. And I'm just expecting that I would direct them to you, and you will lob them that way.
I'm sure they're listening intently.
Okay, there's several. Well, you may be underwhelmed, at least to start. There are several, but they're straightforward. And I also should say that I understand that in cases the answer might be that we don't know, but I want to know, or we want to know if they don't know. And so, specifically, first of all, will a cafe be a place where food and drink are prepared to order?
Okay. Got that. Why don't you just go
you want them
your,
all? Well, I can
right?
save you the time. I can hand you a copy of the questions if that's what. If you're going to
go
do,
ahead, just read them down there quickly,
okay.
and then we'll.
So
we'll
related to that, will food be served and consumed primarily within the building or in designated outdoor eating areas?
Okay. Location of serving. Okay.
Well, I want to know specifically whether or not they're served and consumed primarily within the building or in designated outdoor eating areas, because that's the language that's used in the definition of a restaurant contained in the zoning regs.
Yeah, I'm just kind of hitting the high points here, and you can submit those to us afterwards.
Okay. Will people be allowed to call in orders?
Okay. Got it.
How many seats will the cafe have?
Okay.
What's the basis for this number? Is it based on market studies? Is the number based on other factors? What are those factors? Will cafe customers coming from any other use or unit in the PUD be able to access the cafe anytime it is open?
You got to run that one by me one more time. So,
will cafe customers, so people coming to the cafe who are coming from any other unit in the PUD, will they be able to come at any time that the cafe is open? I'll give you a little bit of background. Okay. This is an activity that's authorized under the accessory uses provisions in the zoning regulations. It's affected by definitions. It's also affected by the condition of approval from the earlier stage of development. And the question I'm asking is getting at whether or not people who, say, are employed in one of the offices someplace in the PUD, would they always have the ability to go into the cafe anytime the cafe is open? Or would there be some times that the cafe is open that they are not able to get in, that it's for a special event, a private party, something to that effect? And that, in fact, was my follow-up question. Will a cafe ever be used for private events? If so, how often? Will the private events be limited to people who are affiliated with other uses in the PUD?
Okay.
The next question I had is, will the cafe ever operate at times when the retail sales area for Fiddlehead is not open to the public?
Okay.
The next question goes to the PUD as a whole. Does the PUD include any commercial spaces or units that occupy 2,500 square feet or less? And if the answer to that is no, are there any other units in the PUD that are 3,000 square feet or less? And if the answer to that is no, are there any other units in the PUD that occupy a space of 4,000 square feet or less?
2,500, 3,000, and 4,000. Okay.
So my next question really hinges on the answer to the question, how many seats would be there? So the question, I'll use the...
As in question number 4.
Yeah, so the question, if we say X seats, the question is, how is a cafe with seating for up to X people and occupying 2,500 square feet of space clearly subsidiary to one of those office spaces? So if there is, in fact, a unit in the PUD that is 2,500 square feet in size, and let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that there are seats for 40 people in this restaurant or in this cafe, that it would be effectively, how is a cafe with seating for up to 40 people and occupying 2,500 square feet of space clearly subsidiary to an office, let's say, that's 1,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to wait for the train?
Got it.
What steps will the applicant be employing to ensure that the cafe proposed in the application is and always will be clearly subsidiary to all the approved uses in the PUD?
Mm-hmm.
Part of the wording in the conditions of approval for Shelbourne Green reads, no more than 2,500 square feet may be occupied by a food service use accessory to the PUD. And the question to the applicant is, what do they think is more important, that the food service use or activity be limited to 2,500 square feet, or that the food service use be accessory to the PUD as a whole?
Okay.
Last 2 rounds of questions. Would there be a restaurant in this location if it wasn't for Fiddlehead? And finally, will Fiddlehead advertise the cafe? If so, how will it advertise? Will the advertising extend beyond the PUD to the general public?
Okay. So I'm going to assume that you're going to want to review those questions once we can get them to you in writing and respond?
Can I
Yes,
add
please.
something first? So, Dean, it sounds like the intent here is you're trying to understand, is this going to be a restaurant or an accessory use, correct? Or is there something else? You asked a lot of questions. There clearly is an intent behind the questions.
The questions fundamentally are to understand the nature of the proposed food service uses. And the reason why that's important is related to the restrictions on those uses and activities that are included in the regulations and that are part of the conditions of approval for that site. So yeah, it's getting the information in the record that would help everyone understand whether or not those requirements are met.
Thank you.
Do you want, I'm happy to give you a copy, Mr. Chairman. I can give one to the minute taker. I have it.
Yes, please. Yeah, you can give one to Caitlin and give one to Marianne if you would. Mr. Bradley.
Mr. Chair, I agree. I think that we would like to take the opportunity to respond to these and review them in writing. Just hearing them, I think these questions are somewhat inappropriate at this stage in the process, even though we'll be happy to answer them. I think I would leave it at that and appreciate your consideration and giving us some time to review these in advance.
I think it would be appropriate. Any further questions from board members? I guess at this point, I haven't looked at what Caitlin's written up on our staff report here at the tail end. We do end up having to classify this at one point, don't we? But I think I'm just going to make a motion to continue this to the next appropriate time slot. You have a time frame that you'd be looking at to maybe respond to these questions? I think that would be appropriate that you responded somehow. And I think it should be done in a public forum. You are. Use the mic, please.
I'm Peter Raymond, also representing Shelbourne Green. And when you say continue to address these questions at another sketch plan stage, is that?
Yeah.
May I just offer that I think a lot of these are kind of one, legal questions, and two, asking kind of specific factual questions that are much beyond what is necessary. We're happy to do, to answer these questions and to continue, but I don't think it's completely necessary based on the current stage that we're at. That's all.
Well, there's some risks involved with that. I think I'd be leaning towards, before we moved any further, other than a continuance, I think I would like to deliberate in this with my fellow board members, which how's people's time this evening? Do we want to do that this evening? Okay. So with that being said,
well, I wanted to respond. So we're quite literally at your service in terms of when you would like us to have these ready for you. Obviously, we'd like to continue the process as expeditiously as possible. So if you let us know when you would like us to come back with responses, we'll be happy to do so.
Well, if we're going to deliberate on this, I mean, we can't really, if we close the hearing right now, we really can't take any more testimony on this unless you asked us to reopen it. If I'm correct in that, Kate, right?
Yeah, once you continue to session, then you have to issue findings for it. So I think it makes most sense to address them now, especially since the purpose of sketch is to decide whether or not you're okay with the concept.
Right.
Since the concept largely
Yep.
includes
Well,
the rest.
if you're willing to wait, you can stick around too. We're going to probably do this deliberation in private. Jeff?
We weren't given any evidence that indicates that this is going to be a restaurant. There's just a high-level description saying that they have to serve food to accommodate the state, to abide by state law. So I get that. So what Mr. Pierce asked was a whole bunch of detailed questions, understanding if there's a break in the ordinance, which I get that also. But does that have any bearing on this? That's what I don't see the tie. I mean, I think that's what I'm wondering. Go ahead, Kate, help.
So, did you?
Go ahead. It's just the decision's going to have to be written very carefully, then, I think.
So, I think what you said is important to think on for a moment. Fiddlehead, just like every other use in this PUD, is allowed an accessory use, 1,500 square feet.
Right.
This cafe, restaurant, whatever we do or do not want to call it at this point, if its purpose is to serve Fiddlehead, then it calls into question, okay, is it the accessory use in Fiddlehead is a tasting room, let's say, so it's an accessory to their accessory use, so it's all to do with Fiddlehead, and the findings read that the PUD as a whole, all the businesses are to be served by this restaurant. So I think what I mean by cafe. So I think what we need to think about is that, and if that concept is in keeping with the original conditions. And I think in that regard, it might be important to answer these questions before you make a decision, because whether or not you conceptually agree with that is going to inform a lot. You look like you're going to bat back.
No, but there's grounds for a variance, because there's changes in factual or regulatory circumstances beyond control of the permit when this was first granted.
So
I have that written on my card here.
I'm going to back up there and say they haven't requested a variance.
But that goes to the square footage thing.
Well, so what they've, so they haven't requested a variance.
Maybe we should deliberate.
And well, I think the danger of entering into deliberative right now, unless you want to enter into deliberative right this moment and then come back into this meeting, is that then we have 45 days to issue a decision, and I don't know if you have enough information or not to issue a decision.
That's
the conundrum. But, sorry.
What I'm saying is to the applicant that given the fact that this is, somewhat I'm going to use a strong term here, it's kind of an ambush. If we go ahead and deliberate, we close this hearing, then we're locked in, we have to issue a decision. And that, I know you want to keep the ball rolling, I live that, that's my world every day. And, but I hate to see you get backed into a corner that you don't want to end up in, nor do I want to see this end up for, notice of violation and issues going on later on. I think we want to try to write a good, solid decision that everybody can live with and everybody can comply with and the neighbors can live with. And it doesn't come back to haunt us later.
I couldn't agree with you more. So we'd be more than happy to answer the questions. I think that what I want to leave you with is this. We've been trying to work with the town, and now we're trying to work with you to help us with some guidance. It's clear what it is that we are trying to get to here, hopefully. And if we're not doing it in the correct way, and there's a better way for us to get there, we would absolutely love your input and your suggestions, because obviously that's how we're going to get to something that works for everybody. So.
At the last meeting, Matt wasn't really able to answer the questions about the food service or the cafe. And from what I've heard about your meeting with the folks from the Gables, that doesn't seem to have progressed very much. Do you have a sense that he does have a more solid plan than what was discussed at the last meeting?
In all honesty, I would say no. What I think it's a fair ask. I really do. I think you do. It would be good to have better certainty around it, and I completely understand the need for it. What I can leave you with, though, is that, and Ann, maybe it wasn't as clear as to you as it was to me. He was unequivocal as to the fact that he is not wanting to be in the restaurant business. He is doing what he needs to do to satisfy what the state says he has to do in order to do this. So The idea is not for a restaurant or a speakeasy or, you know, a loud band bar. This is not that at all.
Right, but the problem is the same thing that could happen when we approve this, whenever that was, I forget. 5 years ago, maybe?
5 years.
Roughly.
Yeah.
You know, that 6 o'clock number was, sure, sounds like a great idea. Somebody's gonna open a place where people that live and work in the neighborhood can go in and grab a scone and a cup of coffee at any one of these businesses, and, you know, out they go, and the place winds down, and it's over after, you know, 6 o'clock. It was a business park. And things change, you know, things evolve, just as you said. And moving forward, things could change and evolve. Mr. Cohen could get bought out by somebody, or, you know, and then next thing you know, somebody says, hey, let's crank up the food service, and then there's a problem. So that's why I think we need to make certain we look at this carefully, write a good, solid decision, so everybody knows what can and can't be done in this facility.
And we appreciate that. I really do.
It's just safe for everybody.
So I don't know if you have a suggestion as to when you would like us to come back, but...
I would like to see the spirit of cooperation, which I know exists between the town and you guys, to just deal with this, so when you come back to us, you guys are all in agreement. Okay?
I'm not sure it's so much about agreement as providing information and clarification of what's being asked.
And if where there's disagreement, there's clearly defined. How's that?
Yeah, this...
Again, I don't know if it's disagreement, though.
I think that it's clarification. I think it needs to be clarified, and I'm gonna leave that up to you and the zoning officers, enforcement officers designee here. If you wanna work that out with staff, you know, that's fine. We're gonna leave that up to you, how you handle that. But, point well taken, Jeff, but that's their cat to skin, for lack of a better word, so. My recommendation is we continue this. And you take off in any direction you wish. We might talk about it a little bit, but, we need more information. And how's our agenda looking next meeting? So it's a carbon copy. We can change the date and just change it. So we're looking at February the 7th, I believe.
Excellent.
Correct?
So with your permission, we'd like to be on the agenda for February 7th.
All right.
Wonderful.
But do we want to get the answers before that?
If you decided you wanted to get that information out to us sooner, so we can have it with our packet or anything,
we'll commit to getting
it's
them
in
to
your
you.
best interest.
Yep, we'll get them to you.
Iron this out, because we're going to try to make a decision on this the next meeting.
We'll get them to you within the next 2 weeks, prior to the end of it.
Means to the town,
To the
they have a
town,
chance
but,
to
which will
review
be
it
then
and-
disseminated to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Wonderful.
We'll let you guys stir the pot, and when you guys come to something, when you think it's appropriate to send the information, that's fine.
Well, let's get the answers.
Yes.
Thank
Good
you.
with that. Does anybody else have anything? Mr. Pierce?
Okay, in this line of work, you develop a thick skin, and so while personally I take no offense at the use of the word ambush, I have to ask that the record show my objection to the use of the term, and the reason for that is that the issues that I've raised and the questions I've asked are not being raised for the first time. Concern about the project's conformance with the accessory use requirements have been made known to several people involved with the project over a period of time. So it's not something, they've been made in conversations verbally. We've had different meetings with representatives of the team, but I just want to register that objection and express my view that these comments have been made to the team.
Duly noted. Thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue this until February the 7th, 2018?
So made.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. We've got some other business to take care of, so if you guys can do us a favor, clear the room, so we can take this to the next step. We've got some other business. Caitlin, you had something on a sketch plan? We've got a sketch plan.
I thought that was it.
So, if you guys could just scoot on out, because we need to keep this on the record, so we'll take a 5-minute break or whatever, but I want to go home.
They're keeping you busy?
We just have to, there's something came up, Jeff.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we're on to other business, and Ms. Kehoe, I think, oh, okay, you're happy. So we've got an issue with a sketch plan expiration. Kate, can you tell us what's going on, and we'll talk about it?
And I apologize, I didn't print everything, but I'm pulling up my email so you can look at the request now.
On the big wall?
On the big wall, yeah.
Oh, the big wall.
The big wall.
The wall.
This is exciting.
Last meeting was a small wall.
A request for an extension. Okay, so you looked at it. Oh, and you can look at all the emails. You forgot your hat. It's actually Ian's hat. So the form-based zoning.
My wife helped me.
Yeah.
Alrighty then.
Emails I get. Anyways, I'll fire this one down, guys. The form-based zoning application we got, it was FBZ 1701. We got it 6 months ago, almost.
That's my hat.
It's your, I know, that's why I said it's actually your hat. Anyway, so it's been almost 6 months. In 2 days it will be 6 months, and here's his email. He's been working on it, but he needs a bit more time, and he was hoping for a 3-month extension from the board.
This is the maple leaf. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Remember the house and the garage they're going to tear down and build a mixed use
Mount
by the furniture store.
right on Shelburne Road.
Yeah.
Or, he lives on Mount Philo Road, I think.
It's right next to like Hunter
Yeah,
Avenue.
it's
and,
like-
He had a really sweet logo, remember
Right,
that?
right.
Okay.
Keep it
So-
covered. Where, this is, what's the business there now?
There's no
It's a
business there
house
now.
and a garage.
This is a house, yeah.
What does he want to do in the house? Or
No, he's
business?
going to put up his business and apartments above.
Yeah, what was the business? Carpet cleaning?
Maple
Yeah,
leaf
carpet
carpet
cleaning.
cleaning.
Okay, got it, okay.
So anyway, you guys can grant up to a 6-month extension where good cause exists, and it's up to you whether or not you think this is good cause, and if you're willing to do a 3-month extension.
As I recall, there was no opposition to the original. We had a quick little sketch. Was it sketch?
Yeah.
And no one was there for it. I don't have a problem granting more time.
No.
There was nothing controversial.
So he's asking for 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the hopes of getting it in like the next 2 weeks to a month. He's really close, but I said give yourself more time.
Okay.
So.
I'm interested to see it. I actually drove by afterwards because I was curious. And the plot of land looks a little small for what he's planning to do.
It's very tiny, which is why form-based
That's
works
kind of the
for it.
form-based.
Yeah. There's like very minimal setbacks,
Mhm.
requirements, and so it's going to be a
I'm
big.
looking forward to seeing the whole application.
So is this something, it's not really a decision
know.
item, or do you have to make a motion
Do we,
to grant
we don't
this
have to have
extension?
this advertised?
No, it's just a discussion item, but I
Okay.
do think you should make a motion
All
for
right.
their
So I then would
record.
make a motion to grant an extension for this for a period of 90 days.
Second.
Seconded, all is in favor?
Aye.
Good.
You can
abstain.
abstain, whichever you prefer. Maybe
Yes.
abstain.
I'll abstain. Lisa, since I wasn't there for the.
Okay. So, do we have any other business while we're on the tube? You do? Okay.
After talking with Kate, and given that we have new members, I was thinking it might be a good time for us to have a little retreat at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I was going to talk with Kate about that a little bit too.
What are your thoughts, Ian?
No, I think it would be great. I know we've talked about it a number of times, but you know, sort of the public meeting rules have gotten in the way, and just something that came up at the last meeting reminded me that, you know, finding a way that we can sort of at least remind ourselves of some of the issues surrounding some of the. I mean, that was a complicated case with Desitel, but there were certainly some issues that, you know, I think as a group we would have been better off reminding ourselves, oh yeah, that's right, you know, and some of those ongoing things. I mean, I think we got to the right place, but, you know, I think just as a group.
Well, we can certainly meet, right? I mean, just.
We'd have to notice it.
We just have to notice it.
Okay.
We can have it.
Yeah.
I don't know, the select board's met at like, what, Shelburne Farms or Wake Robin or
Shelburne Vineyard?
somewhere else. Vineyard.
I mean, it really just came out of. I mean, they don't come along that often, but you know, every once in a while, there's one of those that just, you know, we've met 2 or 3 times, and you know, over a long period of time, and it's helpful to just remind ourselves of, oh yeah, this one, because I mean, I think with
they do happen over such a long period.
Yeah, well, with the 2 brothers, we could have anticipated what their issues were. They didn't hit it head on, but we kind of knew it was there, and you know, it wasn't really until we were in it where, you know, I think at least I realized, oh yeah, that's right, and you know, at that point, again, I think we ended up at the right place. It was just didn't feel great.
I even after being on the board for as long as I have, which isn't as long as, you know, the majority, I still don't really have it down in my head. I probably should have your name tag, Jeff.
Oh, the cheat sheet?
The cheat sheet. We should all have
Just get those for all of our, type it up and put a sticky back on there.
Yeah.
It's on there.
It's all,
At least it wants to.
all the
I get
rules.
confused about, once I figure it out, I write it down.
Yeah.
No way.
So.
All I know
Yeah.
is don't forget
Something like
behind
that,
me.
And a little refresher of what Brian taught me.
Yeah.
And Kate did her PowerPoint. I think we could all benefit by looking at that again. And I sure wouldn't mind. I don't know exactly when or how. I'm more than happy to offer up my house because I think it might be big enough to accommodate all of us, even though we would have to notice it and pretend. Oh, we'd have to have VCAM too. No, we wouldn't. Why not? Because it wouldn't be a formal.
Somebody just has to take minutes, right?
Right.
I think so. I don't know how a retreat works differently from a meeting.
Usually a retreat is at a spa.
I know.
Yeah, aren't we flying somewhere?
We go to Top Notch.
Top Notch or
We could have like
Snowflake.
8 massage tables right in a row.
Oh boy, can you imagine the press? DRB goes to a spa.
Bermuda.
Group massage.
We'll take some of the heat off the select board.
It's like the hospital. It's like the hospital board. They go to Bermuda every year.
Yeah, that's
Still on
right.
camera, right?
All right.
Sorry. We're still on camera.
heard the adjournment yet.
We should do that.
All right. So
Well, wait, I want to know if people are generally in agreement with that, and if so, when, and we should try to have it, maybe sometime in March after the election? I think it would be too soon to try to do it before then.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I'm in support, and yeah.
Do we need to come up with any particular date, or just want to float some later?
I'll come up with what exactly we need to do for the next meeting and then let you
Okay.
know.
Would you propose an agenda for the workshop, whatever?
Sure would.
yeah, I don't
I'm
think
going
we'll
to start
do.
with an exam, which you'll have to take. An oral exam, Jeff.
Does he get to bring his?
I get to get my card.
All right.
Okay,
So
that'd
I'm
be
up for
great.
that.
All right.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
That's it.
So I would move then that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Seconded. All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.